Ukraine is hitting Russia with drones at the Marinovka airbase. 4 Russian Su aircraft have been scrapped. Another 3 helicopters destroyed at the Kirovsky airfield in occupied Crimea. The Defense Intelligence of Ukraine congratulates military facilities in Bryansk on Constitution Day. And Putin suddenly started talking about peace. He wants negotiations in Istanbul and a meeting with Trump. And on an occupier's phone, a shocking photo of unconventional intimacy between Russian soldiers. Hello, my name is Katerina Pachalchuk, and right now, here are the top stories. But first, like this video if you support Ukraine, and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose each other on YouTube. And now, let's move on to the news from the front. Russia is not only continuing its attempts to advance, but is also maintaining record-breaking speeds of movement. In less than a month of June, Russia has captured 446 square kilometers in Ukraine. Among Russia's latest gains, according to deep state analysts, are 3 settlements in the Donetsk region.
The enemy has occupied Novosilka in Zaporizhia, Odratne, and has also advanced near Yalta, in Vaishle and Stepove.
The enemy is also advancing in the Zaporizhia region, specifically in the Orikhiv direction. However, it seems that the enemy has concentrated its main efforts on the Pokrovsk direction. Here, according to the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Alexander Syrsky, Russia has amassed 111,000 troops.
The Pokrovsk direction remains the hottest spot along the entire 1,200-kilometer stretch of the Russian-Ukrainian warfront. Every day there are at least 50 combat clashes here. It is in this direction that the Russians have formed their largest grouping, about 111,000 personnel. The enemy does not cease attempts to break through to the administrative border of Donetsk region. They want to do this not only to achieve certain operational results, but primarily for demonstrative purpose to create a psychological effect, to plant the infamous foot of the Russian soldier, to stick in their flag, and to loudly proclaim another so-called victory.
Syrsky's words are confirmed by the head of the Center for the Study of Occupation, Petro Andriushchenko, who publishes footage of equipment being transferred through Mariupol.
We are recording a large convoy moving from the Mariupol-Bryansk agglomeration to the north of the region through Volnovakha. More than 30 trucks, marked with a V, accompanied by police and military police. What's strange is that, along with civilian white truck Surprise, they are the same ones we previously recorded with military license plates. It seems that the Russians are deploying reserves that they had kept in training camps in the Pryazovia region towards the Pokrovsk direction. This completely matches Syrsky's report about the hottest spot at the moment.
The enemy's increased activity in western Donetsk region is nothing new, but in any case, assault operations in this direction are bringing them closer to the administrative border with Dnipropetrovsk region. And the enemy is closer to Dnipropetrovsk than you might imagine. Earlier, a soldier with the call sign Machnoi reported the capture of Novosergivka. This is just 600 meters from the administrative border with the Dnipropetrovsk region. The proximity of Russian forces to Dnipropetrovsk is also confirmed by new strikes on Dnipro. Yesterday, Russia attacked Dnipro. At first, it was assumed that the KAB had reached the city, but the regional military administration reported an attack with a Chrome-1 missile. This is a hybrid of a glide bomb and a missile, created on the basis of the Kh-38 missile. Its strike range is up to 120 kilometers. And Russia definitely does not plan to stop there. The deputy commander of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, Maxim Zorin, says that Russia has picked up such a rapid pace of advance that, to put it mildly, our summer and autumn will not be easy.
In Donetsk region, the enemy has picked up a fast pace of advance and continues to maintain it. They are also advancing very actively in the Kharkiv region. They have deployed new forces to the Zaporizhia direction. As for the Sumy region, I'm sure they will intensify assault actions there again. I don't want to sound alarmist, but summer and autumn are going to be shitty, especially considering the constant shelling of peaceful cities. The Russians are now investing enormous resources into causing maximum destruction, advancing at any cost, in other words, trying to convince everyone of their complete dominance on the battlefield. It is the front that decides everything, and right now it is extremely important to focus all attention around it.
This is also confirmed by South Korean intelligence. According to their data, Russia will launch a new offensive as early as July or August and will involve a new batch of North Korean soldiers in the assault.
It appears that North Korea has already begun the process of recruiting military personnel for additional deployment to Russia. After the Secretary of the Russian Security Council, Sergei Shoigu, visited Pyongyang and met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un at the beginning of last week, Russian media reported that Pyongyang plans to send thousands of military construction workers to the Kursk front line in Russia.
I understand it's difficult, but now let's talk about something good. Do you know what our soldiers do with North Korean gifts to Russia? They destroy them. And here's yet another proof of that. Fighters from the unmanned systems forces took down a rare North Korean MLRS. Our soldiers hunted it down in the Novopavlivka direction. But yes, of course, it's not easy for the armed forces of Ukraine, so donate to the army, support our warriors. They are doing incredible things. The Russians have suffered another hit, and this time it's a very painful one. Because Ukrainian drones targeted not just any oil refinery, but an entire airfield. The Security Service of Ukraine, together with the Special Operations Forces, carried out a strike at the Marinovka airfield in the Volgograd region. As a result of the operation, 2 enemy Su-34 aircraft were destroyed and 2 more were damaged. And as usual, Russians, what's with your faces? Well, their faces, like their mood, aren't looking too good. Just listen to how Russian war correspondents are reacting.
There's no point in commenting on Marinovka. Another round of multi-billion losses that could and should have been prevented. And it would be good if not only the usual suspects were held accountable, there are others who should answer for this, otherwise it will just keep happening. I'm sure we'll respond to this with a flurry of angry and decisive Telegram posts.
Well, in one thing, the Russians surprisingly are absolutely right. Ukraine will not stop. Here's proof from the main intelligence directorate. Our intelligence officers congratulated Bryansk region on Ukraine's Constitution Day. Main intelligence directorate drones attacked the 120th arsenal of Russia's Ministry of Defense. And again, that's definitely not all. Last night, the Security Service of Ukraine attacked the Kirovsky airfield in occupied Crimea. As a result of a successful special operation, a Panzer S, 1 air defense system and 3 helicopters were destroyed. The blaze was intense. And there will be even more fireworks for the occupiers. Earlier, Ukraine's defense minister Rustem Umerov announced that new powerful strikes against Russia are being prepared.
About 2 weeks ago, a decision was made to increase the number of long-range operations several times over. As Umerov explained, contracts are already being prepared for tens of thousands of new long-range drones to increase the intensity and scale of the strikes.
So, as they say, stock up on water things are about to get started. We already know that the Russian spiritual bonds have long since started to crack. But in the swamps, they keep talking on their blue screens about so-called traditional values and, of course, the sacred war.
We are actively fighting on the very front lines to preserve our cherished traditional values and the vital Russian language. That's precisely why this is the fundamental foundation. It's truly the most profoundly important element of our collective identity.
However, it's not really clear how, for example, Satanists fit into this Kremlin concept. Remember, we told you about such a character among the Russian prisoners of war set for exchange?
He was in a cult. Which one? Come on, tell us. It's interesting. A Satanist. Oh, you turn your head to the right. What's that, a lightning bolt? Yeah. Satanist. What does that mean? I've never seen that before. Oh, it's a complete rejection of any kind of faith. Any kind of faith? Yeah. So what does that have to do with Satanism? Maybe you're an atheist? No. Got it. So you don't believe in anything, is that right? But do you believe in Satan? Number.
But that's only half the trouble. At least that can be explained somehow. After all, by Russian standards, the person has in the end found the path to truth. But the presence of gays among Russian soldiers will be hard for propagandists to justify. Another LGBT representative among Russian soldiers was found at the front. Evidence of his non-traditional orientation was found on the phone of a dead Russian soldier.
This is a story about how the contents of one serviceman's phone completely discredit the Russian army and one of the main pillars of modern Russia. Maximov Alexander Anatolievich, who was killed in the Sumy region, born in 2002. From the 30th Motorized Rifle Regiment of the 72nd Division of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, turned out to be gay. A large amount of explicit photo and video content was found on the young man's smartphone, as well as correspondence with his lovers. There's nothing wrong with that, except that in Russia LGBT is illegal, and people like him, to put it mildly, are at risk from their fellow soldiers.
Well, you have to admit this doesn't really fit with traditional values, although Russian propaganda claims to follow those values. Well, lying is also a traditional Kremlin value, isn't it?
Ukrainian propaganda reported the death of a Russian gay soldier in the war. At the same time, Russian media were encouraged to publish the information with a homophobic slant, while I Want to Live presented it in a tolerant manner. The response to the remark about the inadmissibility of homophobia was the phrase, "Oh, liberals, don't start."
A Russian Telegram cesspool hints that this isn't just a lie, but something completely impossible for Russia. Well, I won't go far. One of the Kremlin's main propagandists, Anton Krasovsky, is gay, although he's so out of touch that he lumps other LGBT people in with the shit.
I'm determining how.
No, this is not sexual orientation. This is another. Who excites you?
Like a man.
Like a man, you're a man and you're attracted to men. All right, we got that sorted then.
Not me. I'm absolutely normal, unfortunately, genetically. I really wish I were straight, I'll be honest with you.
So, yeah, there are no gays in Russia, everyone there is. Meanwhile, while Kremlin propagandists are busy with gays, the bunker dictator is busy with negotiations. Yeah, just imagine, Putin is double, triple, or his carrier came out in public and declared that Russia is ready for a third round of talks.
We are ready to hold such a meeting in Istanbul, but as for the exact timing, that's up to the heads of the negotiating teams from both sides. And by the way, they are in constant contact in real time with each other. They're always calling each other. And in my opinion, that's already not bad. Right now, they're coordinating the timing of the next meeting between themselves. Well, as for the subject, in my opinion, the subject should be the discussion of the memorandums from both sides.
I don't even want to comment on this statement, because this feigned desire for peace already makes me sick. Let's talk about this. Putin's insecurities have resurfaced again, and for the first time in a long while, he put on his almost designer shoes, which add 10 centimeters to his height. And so, while Putin once again started up his not-so-peaceful hurdy-gurdy on the other side of the world, in the USA, President Donald Trump once again declared, well, and somehow this all needs to be resolved and the war needs to end. What can I say to that? Thank you for stating the obvious once again. But once again, Trump not only played the role of Captain Obvious, but also fell for Putin's tales about respect. Trump firmly believes that the bunker dwarf respects not only him as president, but also America.
Vladimir Putin has personally reached out to you to provide assistance with the ongoing Iran crisis.
He made a few nice statements today. Did you see that? Very nice. Vladimir Putin made some very nice statements today. Look, he respects our country again.
He didn't respect it a year ago. I can tell you that right now. But Putin respects our country.
It's interesting when Trump kept repeating, "Make America great again." Did he mean bringing back Russia's and Putin's respect, or what? But let's get back to Putin's supposed desire for peace. We don't know if Trump believes that today, but we and even the German defense minister are convinced it's a lie.
The German defense minister on Putin, an imperialist, does not want peace. Boris Pistorius warned against the understandable, but currently inappropriate, desire for peace. Vladimir Putin only understands the language of force, he emphasized.
And do you agree with the German minister? But Putin is not only lying about his desire for peace, but also when he promises not to attack NATO countries. Well, for example, I'm not surprised.
And now, here's the most important thing. We are planning to cut defense spending. For us, next year, the year after, and for the next 3 years, we are planning, although there is not yet a final agreement between the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Finance, and the Ministry of Economic Development, but overall, everyone is thinking in this direction. And Europe is thinking about how to increase its defense spending. So who is actually preparing for some kind of aggressive actions? Us or them? Yes, we do want to complete the special military operation with the result we need, of course, but that's exactly what everything here is being planned and calculated for, specifically for this, and not for any aggressive plans against Europe or NATO countries.
But let me remind you that 2 days before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Russia also denied its plans and accused Europe of spreading fake news.
Sergei Lavrov noted that in Moscow they do not expect the West to ever feel ashamed for spreading slander about the alleged preparation for an invasion of Ukraine. Although the troops participating in the exercises have either returned or will soon return to their places of deployment, the hysteria in foreign media does not stop.
Whether or not our certain partners who initiate the spread of slander, essentially disinformation and engage in information terrorism, I truly can't even find another more fitting word for it right now, feel any sense of shame. I don't think they will ever truly repent for this.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
In Ukraine, they understand that not a single word from the Kremlin can be trusted. This understanding is gradually reaching others as well. But still, Russia's plans to attack a NATO country are being underestimated. The publication BILD writes that after the war with Ukraine, Russia will become even stronger and move on.
The inspector of the German army, Lieutenant General Alphonse Mays, warned on the program Maybrit Ilna. Contrary to expectations, after the war in Ukraine, Russia will not become weaker, but stronger. I am firmly convinced that the Russian armed forces will become stronger after this war. For Russia, the level of losses does not matter at all. They call up 200,000 conscripts every year. They have increased their personnel numbers to 1.5 million. This is preparation for a large-scale conflict with the West.
This is not about a hypothetical threat at all, because on Russian state television and obviously in the corridors of the Kremlin as well, there are discussions about the necessity of bombing Lisbon, Paris, and Berlin. Let me refresh your memory.
All right? Let's say we send in troops to protect the Russian-speaking population, 40% of Latvia. Will NATO countries fight? Are the major European capitals of Berlin, Paris, London, and Brussels truly ready to face the devastating consequences and burn from the strikes of our powerful missiles? And if necessary, from the use of tactical nuclear weapons?
And it seems the ice has started to break, because even America has begun to get involved in the issue. Amid discussions that Russia might use exercises in Belarus as a cover to prepare for an offensive, the White House, according to journalist Roman Cymbaluk, may have threatened Lukashenko that the US would bomb Minsk.
They probably won't if you conduct the Zapad 2025 exercises. And if something happens to Lithuania or Latvia, if some unidentified Shahid drone flies in, and if you then claim that it could be bought at any military surplus stores and we will bomb Minsk, well, probably something like that. That's how maybe the wording was different, but that's the gist. And they wished us success. They said, listen, why do you need Moscow? Step away from the axis of evil and you'll be happy.
The question of whom Lukashenko fears more, Putin or Trump, remains open. That's why, just in case the media aren't stopping their discussions about a possible offensive and have even modeled a likely scenario. Bloomberg suggests that, of course, it would all start with the Baltics.
The invasion could begin with a staged incident or some kind of hybrid attack. The Moscow-Kaliningrad railway line, which passes through Vilnius without stopping, is one of the vulnerable points. This month, Lithuanian police were searching for a Russian man who jumped out of a moving train as it was passing through their territory.
Well, and then the Kremlin would use its favorite tale about protecting Russians.
Then Moscow could send in troops under the pretext of protecting Russian citizens left in a difficult situation, effectively invading Lithuania. It could also launch attacks on Estonia and Latvia, deploy its fleet to establish control over the Baltic Sea and its key islands, as well as sever the land connection between the Baltic states and Poland in the Suwalki corridor.
Then NATO will invoke Article 5, but no one can predict how it will play out at this point. What is certain, however, is that there will be mutual attacks on military targets and infrastructure. Soon trade in the Baltic Sea will come to a halt, and then both sides will engage in hybrid operations against undersea cables and the energy sector. Where the United States stands in all of this is a rhetorical question, but we have one more scenario to consider. I'm publishing it on Ukrainian Telegram. In all scenarios, Russia has one goal: the Baltic countries. According to this plan, the Kremlin's main objective is to isolate the Baltic states from NATO support through the Suwalki corridor and, of course, to destroy NATO's military infrastructure in the region. And here's how everything could unfold step by step.
The Russian army will try to suppress the resistance of the Lithuanian, Latvian, and Estonian armies within 48 to 72 hours. A unified military bridgehead will be formed from Kaliningrad to Belarus. Stage 1. Preliminary phase. Destabilization. 1 to 5 days before the invasion. Cyber attacks on government websites, banks, and thermal power plants. Information and psychological operations. Creating panic. Disinformation, provocations, sabotage, attacks on railways and fuel depots. Stage 2. Blockade of the Suwalki corridor. The goal is to capture the towns of Suwalki and Marinovka to create a corridor, severing Poland's land connection with the Baltics. Stage 3. Offensive against the Baltic states. Day 1 to 3. First strike, Kaliningrad, Lithuania. Second strike, Belarus, Lithuania, or Latvia. Third strike, airborne operation, airdrop behind enemy lines, for example, on the outskirts of Riga or Tartu. The objective is demoralization, destabilization of the rear, and seizure of airfields.
What do you think of such a scenario? Is it realistic? Write what you think in the comments. Scenarios are one thing, but when it comes to discussions about a possible Russian attack on NATO countries, there is also a practical side to consider. The other day we talked about how 5 countries bordering Russia want to create a kind of iron curtain by sowing their border areas with anti-personnel mines.
If necessary, they will sow the quiet pine and birch forests along their borders with millions of mines, a weapon that was once considered so abhorrent that most of the world tried to ban it forever. Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland have announced their withdrawal from the 1997 Ottawa Convention, which bans anti-personnel mines. Later, in June, it is expected that all 5 countries will officially notify the United Nations of their withdrawal, which will allow them to produce, stockpile, and deploy such munitions by the end of the year.
Alongside this, NATO countries are increasing their defense spending. But there is still another safeguard. As we've already mentioned, a Russian attack could begin as a result of a provocation. Also, to prevent any provocations from the Kremlin, Finland has closed its borders with Russia. The country did this back in 2023. It did this in stages, and at the same time was building a kind of fence along the border with Russia. But in Finland, despite the obvious danger, there were some individuals who opposed closing the border with Russia. And these people even appealed to the European Parliament, asking it to overturn the Finnish government's decision to close itself off from Russia. But fortunately, the European Parliament rejected this petition and recognized Finland's right to close border checkpoints on its external border, especially in light of the growing hybrid threat from Russia.
Against the backdrop of war and hybrid threats from the Russian Federation, Finland, in accordance with the Schengen Borders Code, has the right to close certain checkpoints on its external border in order to protect its national security or public order.
I fully support this decision and advise everyone who borders Russia to fence themselves off from it. What do you think? They got carried away and went too far. Palestinian activists protesting in Belgium against arming Israel damaged military equipment intended for Ukraine.
The vandals broke into the OIP land systems hangar, where they damaged armored vehicles with hammers, spray-painted graffiti on them, and smashed windows. Since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion, OIP Land Systems has supplied Ukraine with hundreds of armored vehicles. The company's president, Freddie Verslus, clarified, "We do not sell anything to Israel." The vandals broke into the hangar and damaged a large amount of equipment. The only harm they caused was a 1-month delay in delivering the vehicles to Ukraine.
Because of their mistake, these vandals damaged equipment worth over $1 million. This is a case where activism went completely in the wrong direction. Please like this video to support what we do, and be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our next episodes. See you soon!